Lee, we'll start with you on your 2-minute introduction.
Very good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity very much to be here, and I thank the Petoskey News Review and the Petoskey Chamber for being willing to host this and put in the time so we could all introduce ourselves. But yes, my name is Lee Chatfield, and I was born and raised right here in Emmett County. My wife in the back, that is Stephanie Chatfield, and we will have been married for 6 years, 4 days after the primary election. So win or lose, we will be having a celebration on that day. And I've been living back in the area for the past 4 years since I graduated from college. In high school, I graduated from Northern Michigan Christian Academy, located in Burt Lake, and my wife's a graduate of Petoskey High School. But when I was in college, our main concern was finding an opportunity to move back here and to teach, and that position opened up. And my undergrad was in history education, and my master's degree was in public policy. And I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to be living in the area, raising my kids in the exact same community that I had the opportunity of growing up in myself, and thrilled to be here, and hope to answer every question to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. Petoskey News Review, the Chamber, you guys always do a real good job, a fair job, whether primary or general election, so it's always an honor to be here and to have the debate and to get the candidates in front of you. So as your state rep, it's been my pleasure serving you. My family's had a long history in this area and also a history of public service in Emmett County, so it's my pleasure to continue that and to continue to work for Northern Michigan. We're going to talk about a lot of issues tonight. I hope we talk about some of the ones that I'm hearing when I go door to door. Education funding, road funding. There's not a ton that we can do at the federal level here, but we still take those questions at the door, and we're just as concerned as everyone else with where the federal government's headed. But I have to tell you, 4 years ago when I ran, it was a lot more doom and gloom when I was knocking doors. It was a lot more, Frank, I don't know if I can make my house payment. Frank, my kids are leaving. I'm not sure that I'm going to have my job in the future. I don't like where Michigan's headed. And although we're hearing some conversation about what we have to do next for Michigan's future, like roads and education, it's a lot more positive. Michigan is on the comeback. I think it's on the comeback because you sent people down to Lansing and they did what they said they were going to do. For me, I put a plan together, a plan that I thought would help right the state, things that they were talking about for years but just couldn't get done. The Michigan business tax, that was the first thing we did to change the tax code. It was the worst tax and it was stifling business. The same thing with the personal property tax. On August 5th, I encourage you to vote yes because we're going to eliminate a barrier to entry for business, which is we have a specific tax that disallows them to put people to work by taxing their manufacturing equipment. So I'll be voting yes, and hopefully that passes as well. First and foremost, this legislature for the last 3 years has done what we should do, but they haven't been. We're balancing budgets and we're paying down on debt, and that's good for our future. So I look forward to answering the rest of your questions and to talk a little bit more about where Michigan's headed with you tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the Chamber and Petoskey News Review for putting this together. I'm Greg MacMaster, graduated from Mansalona High School in 1980, went to Northwestern Michigan College, picked up an aviation license, and then quickly entered the Air Force. And after 10 years of serving in the military, left in 1991. Started out as a weapons munitions technician, nuclear weapons, and didn't see a future in that. Cross-trained into meteorology, and well, pretty much the rest is history. Got out, taught at the college for a couple of years, aviation meteorology and also forensic meteorology. I got picked up on a TV station from that point on. I've been on TV and radio for about 15 years, and I'm sure you've seen me on there. After that, decided to make a change and help improve government, and ran for office, and won by a landslide, and been a state representative for the 105th District, which includes Antrim County, Charlevoix, Otsego, Montmorency, and Oscoda County. It is one of the greatest honors to be able to serve our nation as a military active duty person, and then being able to come out and serve for the public as a public servant. My background in politics is quite simple. I've got a degree in common sense, and it's worked perfectly ever since then. The work that I've done for the public and by the public will continue to stay that way. Your taxes pay for my paycheck. You are my boss. I answer to you, not the people in Lansing. And because of that, I'm able to stay the most conservative voice in Northern Michigan, and will continue to stay that way as we move forward. And I'm going to look forward to answering your questions.
Good evening. I'm Schmidt. I'm the state representative from Grand Traverse County, the 104th District. And I would like to say thank you to the Chamber, the paper, the college, and also the Human Resources Professionals group here in Emmett County. Thank you for putting on the forum. I grew up here in northern Michigan. My parents still live in the same house I grew up in. I was a class of '85 at Traverse City Senior High. I know there was another senior high person here. And it was a great life having grown up in northern Michigan, in Traverse City. Went away to college, and the first opportunity I had to move back to northern Michigan, I took it. I helped reopen the Park Place Hotel. It was exciting to be a part during what was, if you remember, in the early 90s, another recession that faced Michigan and the country. It was a tough time, but made a go of it. I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to be a successful small business person and run family businesses. I then entered into politics when I had the chance. I had served as the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the city of Traverse City, but had the chance to be a county commissioner. It was an exciting opportunity to understand how local government works, to work with my friends, my family, my neighbors. The opportunity in 2008 to become state representative was also an opportunity to serve for a community that had given back so much to me. I ran. Those were some very dark days, 2008. Many of you remember we had Granholm administration, tough times. We were in the Fighting 43. There were only 43 House Republicans. Got into office. We did the best that we could. But I also helped out with the House Republican Campaign Committee, making sure that we took back that majority in 2010, to have colleagues who could make a difference. And that's what we started to do. And as I knock on the doors, and I want to say thank you to my wife, Kathleen, she's here this evening, and my two boys, Ryan and Danny, for allowing me this opportunity to serve. We have a lot of good things going on, but there is much more to be done. And I would ask for your vote and your support this August 5th, please.
I, too, would like to thank the sponsors. Is this thing working? Okay. For allowing us to have the opportunity to sit here and talk with all of you. And my name is Dr. Phil Bellfy. I am not a doctor like Dr. Dan, though. I actually believe in science. I actually believe in the science of climate change. And living in the 37th State Senate District, the environment is the most important issue, I believe, to us here in this district. We are tremendously tourist dependent. It's the #1 tourist district in the entire state. It's the most beautiful district in the entire state. And if we do not protect our environment and the jobs that are reliant on that clean and green environment, then there's really no reason for us to be here. And Mr. Arcan didn't know anything about the Enbridge pipeline, but I certainly do. And my proposal, along with Jim Page, is double wall or not at all. And in contrast to Mr. Arcan, that does not supply us with any jobs. That pipeline exports oil to Canada. So everybody here is talking about their roots. I'm a Native American. My roots go back to Sault Ste. Marie, 10 generations. I've lived there since 1970 when I got out of the military, took my GI Bill up to Lake State. I got a degree up there. I got 2 other degrees from Michigan State University, and I am now Professor Emeritus of American Indian Studies at Michigan State University. So I'm a recovering academic, and I've been sane now for almost 2 years. And in very, very stark contrast, I am the only non-conservative sitting at this table today. And I would appreciate your vote on August 5th. Thank you very much.
May I stand up, please? Is that appropriate, or do I have to sit down? Can I stand up? My name is Jimmy Schmidt. I live in Central Lake, Michigan. I'm running for the office of the 37th Michigan Senate. I grew up downstate. I was a farmer. I was raised Black Angus beef cattle, about 45 head for almost 42 years, and also had a large apple orchard. It was a family farm. My grandparents bought it in 1932. I also ran a small manufacturing company that manufactured ordnance products for U.S. Department of Ordnance, the military. For almost 42 years, I grew up in it, and later on I owned it. I've gone through different colleges and graduated. I went to Mott Community College, which was in Flint Junior College at the time, got a liberal arts degree. and I did a lot of my college at night because I was working during the day. I also went to Detroit College of Business at Flint Extension, got an accounting degree. I went to Baker, took some accounting courses, and I also went to Henry Ford Community College in Dearborn and took the technical school, which is the old Ford Trade School, and got a certificate for journeyman's card in tool and die. My last accreditation from a college was Northwest Michigan College in Traverse City. I got a paralegal degree in 2009. I got 3.4 grade point average. I got the highest scholarship that NMC had offered. It's called the Biederman Scholarship. I got it for 2 years and paid my books, my tuition. The reason I'm running for senator is because there's a lot out there right now on the floor that can be done. I'm for MichiganFairTax.org, which eliminates the personal property tax and also eliminates the sales tax and income tax, and puts the goods and services tax of approximately 6.5% on goods and services, with the exemption of home health care and things like prescriptions and medical equipment. I'm also for part-time legislature, which is parttimelegislature.org. It was put on, there was petitions floated to put on the proposal for this coming election, but it didn't quite make enough signatures. I'm all for that. That would be that instead of a senator making about pretty close to $74,000 a year, 78, he'd be only making $34,000 a year. He spent 2 months in Lansing, and the rest of the time he would be taking and working with his constituents in the area. I thank you for listening to me. I hope to have you vote on August the 5th. One last word. Me and Greg MacMaster will be going forward after the primary election into the regular election, which would be November the 4th. Thank you very much, and have a very nice day.
As you've been talking to constituents during your campaign, what do you see as the most important issue facing voters in Northern Michigan?
Absolutely, and I said it in my opening remarks, because overwhelmingly, and I'm sure if these gentlemen have done as many doors as I've done this summer, that it's infrastructure. And this is a problem that hasn't developed overnight, and it is taking the rest of this year to fix it, but it's roads and bridges. And this is a black eye on our economy. We have businesses that will fly into our airports, and those are great, but as soon as they start driving on the roads, there's a real problem. So I say it's roads. We pay enough in gas taxes, though, I will say that, but we have to figure out where that money's going. Right now, a lot of it goes to education. I think the voters are ready to take a stand and to have the fuel taxes they pay at the pump go to infrastructure. That's the most important thing I see, but it's an ongoing problem. We have to change the way in which we pay. It's not a wholesale tax anymore. We have to make it a percentage-based tax. Otherwise, we're going to be coming back and revisiting this problem every 10 years, and the legislature will have to act. It should go up and down with the cost of inflation.
To Greg, yeah.
Thank you for the vote of confidence, Jimmy. The three things that I've realized by talking to people out there: number one, jobs; two, roads, as Frank had mentioned, and also school equity, or currently the inequitable school funding. Northern Michigan consistently has one of the highest unemployment rates in the entire state, and we need to expand and grow our local economy to be able to do that. State government needs to do more for us. They can't create the jobs, but they can certainly make it a lot easier between over-regulations, over-taxation, things that we've been working on now for the past 4 years, making it sustainable for these businesses to want to do business in Michigan. Out-of-state companies that look to Michigan as a viable opportunity for them to not just be able to survive, but to make money and invest in Michigan and have a good working relationship with their employees where they can stay in business for many, many years to come. As far as roads go, it's pretty simple. We've got a road funding problem. 25 years ago, we didn't have that problem. We had a funding balance that was able to take care of the roads. The problem, the roads didn't need to be taken care of. They were fine. So they raided the fund, took it elsewhere. That money's still out there. All we need to do is redirect it back to the road funding bucket that we have now. We don't need to raise taxes to do it. I have a plan to fix our roads by putting over $1 billion a year, that's billion with a B, into our roads. My opponent doesn't have a plan but to raise taxes. So I know we can get this done, it's just going to take some time. And the government and our governor is working for equitable school funding.
Any of you need the question repeated, let us know, but wait.
Having served now for my 6th and final year as state representative, the things that I hear the most: roads, education, and of course the economy. Let's deal with roads first. One, there has been no rating of the transportation fund, the MTF. Your tax dollars have been going directly to that. That's absolutely false, Greg. We have not taken any money from there. What we have currently is a taxation system that's 19 cents a gallon. It has been that since 1997. What we need to do is address our issues. I put forward, as chairman of the House Transportation Committee, working with my colleagues, and working with many others, a plan to address nearly $500 million in ongoing revenue from existing revenues by addressing efficiency questions, warranties, and making sure that the tax dollars, some of the unallocated monies, go towards fixing our roads. That was without increasing taxes. We got that out of committee, we got that out of the House, and over to the Senate. Unfortunately, they were not able to act on that, but we did do something constructive. That's also the same package that I put together, which was a net tax cut in reality for airports. Again, Northern Michigan, when you talk about the economy, it's inextricably linked to our infrastructure, the growth and the health of our economy. Whether it's tourism, job creation, or agriculture, we must make sure that our transportation system is second to none.
Well, I'm talking to different people than my conservative colleagues here, I'm afraid. When I talk to people, quite often, and of course I'm running as an environmentalist, so that may shift the focus somewhat. The number one issue in Northern Michigan and the 37th State Senate District is the Enbridge pipeline. I'm sorry that other people don't talk about it as much as the people that talk to me. It is a disaster waiting to happen. And it's not only that, of course, there's also other environmental issues. But on top of that, nobody has mentioned the right to work. The people that I talk to are adamantly opposed to that legislation. It has destroyed the middle class, and it's partly responsible for the sorry state of our economy. If people don't have money, they're going to go to your restaurant or to your business. Where are they going to get the money? This legislature is destroying the middle class. That is a very big issue to people that I talk to. And we've heard a lot about the funding of the schools. Well, I'm afraid that some of these people here have forgotten that these people cut the business taxes $1.8 billion and slashed $1 billion from our public schools. And now they're saying, oh, we're going to give you back 50 cents out of that dollar. What we do? We need strong leaders in Lansing that know the issues, and these gentlemen don't know the issues that I've been listening to. Thank you.
I'd like the question repeated, please.
As you've been talking to constituents during their campaign, what do you see as the most important issue facing voters in Northern Michigan?
Well, the most important issue is the economy, very obviously. Roads and bridges and road construction and repair is also important. I favor the MichiganFairTax.org, which would throw more money into the economy because you're taxing people on the goods and services they use. You're not cutting them at the knees before they have a chance to even spend it. I also favor the part-time legislature, as I said before, because it gives the people, the senators, more time to work in their district, 10 months in the area, to work with the constituents, and only 2 months in Lansing to approve the budget. If they don't approve the budget in 2 months, then they're on their own. They pay their own way the rest of the time until it gets approved. As far as I favor light rail transportation, rapid rail to Northern Michigan, from downstate, being Ann Arbor, Lansing, and Grand Rapids, that would meet about Mount Pleasant and come north there up to Petoskey. There'd be a switch off at Walton Junction, which is just below 5 Lake. There'd be 1 or 2 cars or 3 cars would go to Traverse, the others would go up to Petoskey. I'm looking at a model set up by a woman who's in charge of the New Mexico Department of Transportation. It's called a Rail Runner. It's on my link site. You can pull it up. It moves about 40,000 people a day. They have bi-level cars. They have Wi-Fi in the cars. They have a snack car. They run from south of Albuquerque up to Santa Fe. So that's one of my concerns. As far as the Enbridge situation, it doesn't exist. Pipeline number 5. Enbridge's pipeline number 5 runs underneath the Straits of Mackinac. It's been running there since 1954. They're pushing natural gas through it right now and propane. If it wasn't for that, they would have to, your propane price would be a lot higher. Inbridge employs about 635 people in the state of Michigan, and they pay $21 million in sales tax and personal property tax. It's unnecessary. You're doing a good job. So ever since Marshall, when they had that little leak down there, a big leak, I guess you call it a big leak because it was. Thank you. The EPA and the DEQ has made them do pressure tests on that pipeline every month. So it's not an issue. It's pipeline number 5. Thank you very much for your time.
Just throw it down the lead.
Yeah, for me, I think truly it's just been an overall sentiment of people that there's just too much government. You know, it was the late Ronald Reagan always used to joke, and he said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And I think we're seeing a lot of that today at our state level and our federal level. People are concerned whether healthcare or education of a growing federal bureaucracy and states going along with it when the federal government incentivizes those programs with money. But as far as specific policies, I would agree with most of the people to my left that it's roads and our infrastructure. I believe the money is there, like some of these people have said. Michigan has the 4th highest gas tax in the nation, yet our roads are in poor condition. I think that's an indicator of misprioritized funds. I think the state government should have to work their budget much like we work our budget at home, and that's by prioritizing. Obviously, education has certainly been a hot topic, but you know, even for me, I've accidentally knocked on some Democrats' doors too, and even their top concern was roads, 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 roads. So overall, I think we need to limit government as we're moving forward to secure greater personal freedoms.
Interesting enough, many of you addressed this issue in the first question, but we're going to ask it again to give you a chance to round out your remarks a little more completely if you like. So the question is, the condition of the state's roads and bridges has been a big topic of conversation in Michigan. What is your plan to address this important issue?
My plan is quite simple, and it doesn't require raising any of your taxes. Dedicate 1.5% of the gasoline sales tax for roads. That amount will raise about $195 million. Want to repeal the Michigan prevailing wage law. That will raise about $415 million. Dedicate 1% of the use tax revenue to roads. That amount will raise about $239 million. This is part of the legislation reform that we passed already. Redirect some of the oil and gas royalty revenue to roads. It's not rating, like he's going to probably tell you, and that amount could be roughly $35 million. These trucks use these roads to travel, and I think they need to be able to pay some of that to be able to get the roads back up. And also competitively bid out certain state services. That amount can raise roughly $122 million. That right there is over $1 billion every year annually in perpetuity until the roads are going to be fixed, cleaned up, the bridges are fixed, and then we can put that money into a reserve fund and then it stays there. We don't need to raise the taxes. We don't need to go from a 6.5% wholesale tax to a 18.5% wholesale tax that the Senate was going to do. That'll raise the rate of gas by 25 to 38 cents a gallon. You want to kill tourism? That's a great way to do it. That legislation should have never been enacted.
As I discussed earlier, it's a question of actually finding solutions, negotiating, get things done, and that's what we put forward in the road funding plan. The DNR Trust Fund, it was voted on by the people, it's constitutional. You can't take that, you can't read it unless you, the people, choose to change that. So that's off the table. Prevailing wage, fine. I say repeal it, that's fine by me. But the majority of road projects, actually almost 99% of them, contain federal money. That means you still are dealing with the Davis-Bacon Prevailing Wage Act. As far as saving money for schools, that's great. But those are taxes that you already have in place dedicated to the schools. That's where you as taxpayers expect those dollars to go, is to schools. And if they can save money, then we should pay down their debt, pay teachers, pay other expenses. But that's the money you've already dedicated. So it's great to have these ideas, but the actual getting things done is the key issue here. And so you can talk all you want, but we put forward a plan that deals with $500 million a year without raising your gasoline taxes to fix Michigan's bridges and roads. That's something that's actual legislation that's been voted on and passed out of committee and the House. That's the key difference. Talking versus getting results. And I would, that's the plan that we put forward. That's the Republican plan that was supported. Thank you.
Well, somebody mentioned this proposal that's going to be on the August 5th ballot. And I, too, am concerned about the roads, and so are the people that I've been talking to. Obviously, it is a serious problem, and it is, of course, directly related to tourism as well. But my suggestion is, Wayne just said that he's got a $500 million plan. And mine's $590 million. And where does that money come from? It comes from us voting no on proposal 1. There's $590 million apparently that's floating around in Lansing that they can give the tax break to the businessmen. Why not put that $590 million into our road system? They use the roads as much as everybody else. In fact, they may use them even more. One thing that I think we should do immediately would be to take our excess weight and reduce it to whatever the lowest limit is for all the states and provinces that surround us. The fact that our roads are in such terrible shape is because we have the highest weight limits around, and it just destroys our roads. So that would be a place we could start.
One more time, would you please repeat the question?
Yes. The condition of the state's roads and bridges has been a big topic of conversation in Michigan. What is your plan to address this important issue?
Well, my plan is to reallocate some of the funds that are already there that can be used for the roads, the building of bridges, and the road repair. And also I do, as I mentioned before, I favor the light rail transportation for moving people around a little bit more cheaper, a lot cheaper than doing a lot of new construction of roads. But I also believe that the roads existing should be repaired and new bridges replaced. But the infrastructure means that also that you don't have to build as many roads if you move people by light rail transportation. As far as proposal 1, I totally agree with Mr. Bellfy. Proposal 1, if you have any questions about it, it's www.proposal1facts.com. It will generate up to about 15,000 Michigan jobs and increase in business investment by $450 million. Basically, it eliminates paying the same tax on personal property like a manufacturing company has presses, mills, whatever, lathes, you name it, CNC machines. They're paying on the price that they bought that machinery for 20 years ago. It's not depreciated. They're paying the same amount every year.
The state legislature in this term passed the grand bargain to help bail out the city of Detroit. What's the next role for the state concerning Detroit, and will other cities need the state's help in the future?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's been one of my pet peeves, I guess. The people are very concerned, at least many people are very concerned that the tax dollars are going to bail out the city of Detroit. But nobody will mention the fact that the state legislature has cut probably $6 or $7 billion from revenue sharing. It's been hurting every community. It's not just Detroit. Every community has been hit by this revenue sharing problem. So it's kind of an ironic situation, I believe. The state cuts your funding, throws you into a financial crisis, and then they step in and say, well, you need an emergency manager, so then we can take over your infrastructure, we could destroy your democratic process as we go forward with this crazy idea. So the people who live in those cities and the school districts as well, they're suffering. The state has been cutting back on its funding for cities and schools and municipalities, and then they have the gall to blame it on the people who are no longer getting that money. It just, I won't say it, but it makes me angry.
One more time, please. Please repeat the question.
The state legislature in this term passed the grand bargain to help with the bailout of the city of Detroit. What's the next role for the state concerning Detroit, and will other cities need the state's help in the future?
Well, they may need the help, but should we have to bail out everybody? I mean, we live up here, 37th district. Who's going to help us out? Or would we have to cover it on our own? Detroit got themselves into that problem. Detroit should get themselves out of the problem. I mean, to ask the state to come in and help them out financially, they did file bankruptcy. There are terms under federal bankruptcy laws that they can abolish most of their debt and move forward. The reason that they're suffering in Detroit is their tax base isn't there. The businesses moved out. You don't have a growth pattern as far as anything going on as far as manufacturing like it used to be. And this has created the problem. But are we going to have to bail out Grand Rapids tomorrow and Lansing the day after that? And then Pontiac, and then we go on and on and on. I mean, why do they come to the state when they're in trouble? I mean, yeah, there is revenue coming from some of the cities, but Detroit has put themselves where they're at. I mean, they should be liable for what they've done, and they do have the federal bankruptcy law, like I just got done mentioning, and that will relieve a lot of the pressure off of them, and they can move forward. But to have somebody else in Petoskey and Sault Ste. Marie and St. Ignace pay for it, I don't think so. It's not right. I mean, why should we pay for their problems? They have to take care of themselves. Do I have any time left?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, ultimately, Detroit is in the position they're in, ultimately because of mismanagement of funds and fiscal irresponsibility. I think bailing them out sets a bad precedent for the rest of the state, and it doesn't let them learn the hard way. Now, I'll give you an example. Thought of this when he was speaking. I have a son, Matthew, who's almost 20 months old. Several months ago, my son Matthew always wanted to climb up on the ottoman that we had. It was about 1.5 feet off the ground and a carpet floor. And every single time he'd climb up on that, my wife and I would get him and we'd set him down on the ground and say, no, you can't go up there, you're gonna hurt yourself. Well, every single time he kept going back up on the ottoman as soon as we turned around. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. Well, what we had to do eventually, it's only, 1 foot off the ground, 1.5 feet, he had to fall. And he did fall. And he cried and we picked him up and we held him. But what he learned on his own is, you know what? I can't go up on that ottoman anymore because I'm gonna fall off. And it sounds like the school of hard knocks, but ultimately, that's what we do to our cities and other municipalities in our state that are struggling. It is unfortunate that Detroit's in the position that they're in, but I don't support helping them off the backs of taxpayers of northern Michigan. I don't believe that's right.
Seldom do I find a person that doesn't believe that a healthy Detroit means is good for Michigan, means a healthy Michigan, just like a healthy Petoskey means a healthy Emmett County. But it is nowhere near a revenue problem for the city of Detroit. It is a spend problem. It is a corruption problem. Detroit gets more money than any other city in our state from the federal government. They get more government programs from the federal government. Before we got there, they got more state programs than any other city. And how was I, coming from northern Michigan, supposed to vote for another $250 million when each of the residents of Detroit is getting $150 per capita of revenue sharing? So your revenue sharing numbers are quite wrong. And my folks up here are getting $17 per capita. That's wrong. It is not a revenue problem. You take a look at $500 million of statutory revenue sharing. Detroit's got about 7% of the people now. They get about half that pot of money. And so it's not a revenue issue. But we do have to correct it. I voted for the reforms. I voted against the money. We know that with reforms, the city of New York got out of their troubles in the 80s. Baltimore did the same thing. And Detroit will pull itself up by the bootstraps, but it's not doing it with government solutions. It's doing it with private entities like Dan Gilbert, the Illich family, who are reinvesting in the city of Detroit, who are bringing young people down into the city of Detroit. It's doing it by itself, but it's going to need a little bit of government oversight because there are some tax dollars that are going to go through that in bankruptcy. So it is going to be a strong city again, but it's not going to be stronger if we put more money out of our pockets up here in northern Michigan and send it down to Detroit.
Repeat the question, please.
The state legislature in this term passed the grand bargain to help bail out the city of Detroit. What's the next role for the state concerning Detroit, and will other cities need the state's help in the future?
Well, the set of bills that have already been passed through, I voted for the transparency and accountability part, not for the money part. So now that the system is already starting to move forward, it's going to be incumbent upon the legislature and those within government to have the best oversight they possibly can on future contracts and have a double check on it to make sure that Detroit doesn't fall into the same situation it just had. It can reinvest in its own city, but it's going to take the proper mindset, the proper people, and not somebody who's going to try to make money off of this deal. Detroit, when people talked about Michigan, they thought about Detroit. They didn't realize the beautiful natural resources of northern Michigan. Now that we're rebranding Detroit, we're also looking at opportunities to help improve our district in northern Michigan. I do think that the amount of money that's gone into Detroit was squandered, and it wasn't fairly invested wisely, and they were going into bankrupt. Now, what about the rest of the communities? If any other community is going to be having problems, that's why the emergency manager law was put into place, to be able to get in there. They have to admit that they're faltering. They have to stand up and do the right thing for the taxpayers and admit that they are failing and they need to get help. If they continue to hide that money, they're eventually going to get found, get caught, and they're going to be charged with corruption, and then we're going to have to turn around and clean them up. But we can't set a precedence like we did where we give money to Detroit to try to help save them. We can't do that with the other communities. We don't have the money to do it.
It was a very complex issue. I supported the reforms, much like I have supported reforms for all of our communities, for all of our local governments, the state, and our other higher institutions of learning, and our schools. I voted for those reforms, but did not agree that we should, and I did not vote for the $195 million to go to the city of Detroit. It truly is the situation they got into. They need to get out of it. Many of the lessons that Detroit needs to learn are lessons that we have learned up here, not because we have gone into default, but because we have made the cuts when we've needed to. When we've seen tough times in northern Michigan, we've adjusted our budgets, whether it's your household budget, the local unit of government, maybe your city, your village, your township, your schools. We've lived within our means. And some of the other key things that we've passed in the legislature in the past 3.5 years include making sure that we cap healthcare liabilities for both state workers and local units of government, that we capped pension liabilities, and have started to shift people to 401ks to make sure that, again, just like you do with your household budget, that state and local governments live within their means. So part of the reforms that we've made are preventing us from getting into the same trouble that we got into in the city of Detroit. I think a little of the common sense here in northern Michigan could go a long ways down there.
Politicians speak regularly about job creation and getting Americans back to work. How do we do that?
Well, one thing is proposal one. That eliminates the personal property tax on machinery for small businesses. It's going to stimulate the economy, create a lot more jobs. That's one of the ways right there. The other one is the MichiganFairTax.org. That eliminates personal property tax, sales tax, and also your income tax. It gives people a chance to have more money to spend. It's based on the amount of money they spend, not right exactly the amount of money they earn. So you have more chance to get it out there in the economy. The other thing is we get a little cheaper electricity. And I forgot to mention before, I'm going to throw this in. It's not your question directly, but it actually is in some ways. In 2007, the state of Michigan put a cap they had a cap on that 10% of the people that were using electricity in Michigan, be it businesses and consumers, could choose the electric supplier they wanted, so they could get a competitive rate. In 2007, the state put a cap on that. So those 10% are locked in. They can still get their discount by shopping around for a competitive electric source. And I'm going to introduce bills as senator so that every person in Michigan who uses electric power can competitively shop for their power from the electric source they want to. And that will reduce a lot of the spending and trying to manufacturing. Like East Jordan Iron Works, they have electric furnaces there, and so on down the line. So that is one of my propositions that I'm going to put in front of the legislature when I become senator. Thank you very much.
Well, ultimately, it comes down to your philosophy of what the purpose of government is, and with regarding job creation and the economy, I believe the purpose of government is simply to create an environment that all businesses can grow and succeed. Not where the government chooses winners and losers over other businesses. Now, I do have to give credit to our current governor, Snyder. He's done quite an excellent job in taking our state in a different direction than what our previous governor and grandmom had done. Many of the things that he's done in the legislature in the past 4 years, I would have supported as well. First was eliminating the business tax that we had. I do wish, however, when we eliminated the business tax, we did also do that partially on the backs of taxpayers. Your income tax was froze at 4.25% when it was supposed to drop below 4%. I wish they would have allowed that to simply drop back. Also, they have the pension tax. I disagree with both of those, ultimately. And I'd like to see Michigan continue moving in a direction where we have a low tax structure. Ultimately, we're in a national and global economy. We have to make Michigan attractive to other parts of the country. And that happens by having a lower tax structure, lower tax burden, where we allow more competitiveness with our businesses. So it's simply just fostering that environment where we allow low taxes and competition to flourish.
I think it's a multi-part question because it's tough to create jobs. I know my family's it's a third-generation family construction company. We've been through really good years. We've been through really lean years, the most of which was through this recession when we lost employees and family to other states to work. We owe it to those folks to provide a good business environment, an environment where the government is out of the way. I'm happy to be endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce because we've eliminated over 1,500 government regulations in Michigan. In fact, we're only keeping one for every 7 we review. That's important because if you're a small business owner, you understand that time is money. Your state government shouldn't be standing in the way of that. I'm happy that we've eliminated numerous taxes, and we even cut the income tax for everyone, too, in Michigan. That's important because the high tax burden is a disincentive, just like the personal property tax is. So I'm happy that it's gone from 13% unemployment when I took office to 7.5% today. We won't be happy until we get it far below that. But it's not that this governor or this legislature is going to take credit. We just did what we said we were going to do. We tried to have good customer service and get out of your way. It's the folks who stayed and fought it out through the recession that should be encouraged, and hopefully it's those incremental jobs that you can create moving forward for us as a state.
Repeat the question, please.
Politicians speak regularly about job creation and getting Americans back to work. How do we do that?
I don't think the government can create a job, but what they can certainly do is help expand and grow our local economy. So the state government at least needs to do more and be predictable and consistent in its actions towards businesses. Where there's uncertainty in the tax code or state regulations, businesses are going to be slow to take risks and expand. And when they do that, our economy starts to falter. We learned through the Granholm years that a budget crisis and a lack of long-term budgetary and regulatory strategy exasperated an already sluggish state economy. So each year, businesses were whipsawed with tax and regulatory regime changes that made their strategic planning virtually impossible. That was until Governor Snyder came in, and with the help of Frank Foster and Wayne Schmidt, we were able to start moving in a direction to help increase the opportunity for these businesses on a more predictable scale. But there's something more that I'd like to do. I want to examine moving the state to a multi-year budget similar to what's taking place right now in Oakland County, and also tie it to a strategic long-term regulatory vision. Despite the Granholm recession, Oakland County has maintained a AAA bond rating, which saves the county millions in borrowing costs and provides businesses with a stable, predictable economic environment in which to invest. So when Standard & Poor's recently reaffirmed Oakland County's premier AAA bond rating, they specifically cited the multi-year budgeting process as one of the reasons for their rating. So the multi-year bond rating and the budgeting bring stability to the local economy, which in turn leads to more business investment. It's a virtuous circle that feeds on itself, resulting in across-the-board increases in residents' standard of living.
It's exciting. Michigan is doing that, looking several years with their budgeting. With the new budget director, John Nixon, he came in. That's exactly what Governor Snyder was talking about, and that's what we're doing in Michigan. As Governor Snyder said, you want to be governor, you want to run for it in 2038. We're paying down our debt. That's when we'll have the mortgage burning party, as he says. We've already eliminated nearly 1/3 of our long-term liabilities, nearly $22 billion in the past 3 years. Many times government gets in the way, and some of the things that I'm most proud of when I was serving as chairman of the Commerce Committee and working with the Michigan Chamber, and I have their endorsement, and also the Small Business Association of Michigan, their stamp of approval as a small business owner, getting rid of burdensome regulations, and also reforming the Michigan unemployment insurance and workmen's compensation system. We needed a system that serves those workers that if they lose their job or get hurt, that we have a system that's affordable and reliable for them. But as taxpayers, as business owners, it's a privately funded system. So as chairman, we were able to pass legislation that got rid of the $3.1 billion that we owed to the federal government, to get out from under their interests and fees and penalties, and get Michigan's workman's compensation system back on track and its unemployment insurance system. It's things like that. They're not sexy, they're not glamorous, but it's that day in, day out, finding solutions to make Michigan a much more attractive place to do business.
Well, again, I want to thank the panelists for bringing up this issue. Obviously, it is a very, very, very important issue. But there's something that no one is actually talking about. And these sitting legislators here are touting all of the wonderful things that they did. Well, if you go to the website, go to Forbes magazine, and try to find out where Michigan is as far as business climate. It's number 47. 47. In other words, what these guys are doing doesn't seem to be helping very much. I mean, this is the businessmen talking. Forbes is not some kind of crazy left-wing socialist group, you know. They rank Michigan at 47th on the business climate. So obviously, government is involved in creating businesses, despite what these people say. There's lots of people. In this particular district, well, we're sitting here. This is the government. This college, Lake State College in Traverse City, Coast Guard. In Sault Ste. Marie, we have probably 6 or 8 or 10 government agencies, Coast Guard, Border Patrol, etc. We've got Coast Guard here. The government can create jobs, and they can also help facilitate private businesses to create jobs. But for these guys to say that what they're doing in Lansing is helping, they're not.
Very well put. One question, one more time, please.
You already asked me once.
That's what I thought.
You started this.
As we're discussing education, the state delayed implementation of the federal Common Core system for student assessments. What should the state do in the future to measure our students' academic progress?
Local control. I think that's why in the legislature we delayed Common Core. We didn't like what was in it. And if you don't know what's in it, you got to kick it back to the locals. Parents should be able to dictate the curriculum that their kids are learning. And we didn't implement the assessment that Common Core came with it too, because we didn't know what was in that, and we didn't like that. And we thought that, although the MEAT test isn't perfect, we're going to keep that until we find something better. We don't want a federal standard. Common Core is moving forward in different parts of the country. Your state legislature can't affect that, even if it comes to Michigan. But what you can count on me is always coming back to my community, making sure that we hold off on that. What I heard from my school boards, what I heard from my parents, was that, okay, we understand what Common Core is, we don't like it. Is there any way that you can implement a policy where we can control local curriculum at the local level? So if we don't like the 2 + 2 = 5, we can change it. If we don't like the way they're teaching American history, we can change it to what we believe. And so that's what we did with our votes. I believe all of us voted yes on portions of that. But that's the most important thing to me. Standards will always change for academics. Academics, be it Republican or Democrat, will always find a new way or a better way they think to teach kids, but the real teaching comes at home, and that's we find that evident in good homes with good parents. We can't legislate good parenting. I think you see that in Detroit and Pontiac. We can't legislate good government, and we can't take those kids out of bad homes until it gets really bad. So what we can do, though, is have the locals control the curriculum. That's what I support.
Back in 2009, 2010, we had the Race to the Top, and when you unveiled that, it was Common Core. That was before my time. It was when my opponent was in the office at the time, and seeing how Common Core was being implemented and forced down our throats, a lot of teachers, superintendents didn't like it. There was nothing wrong with our education system that we had now, and as Frank said, that we have the MEAT scoring. There was such a pushback from some of the people within the legislature that we didn't want to fund it, we didn't want to see it move forward, that the governor decided to sit back and wait. Frankly, I think we don't need to have any federal involvement when it comes to our education. The parents need to be involved, the school district, the school board, teachers, they're the ones who need to be involved. They know what's best for the children, not our federal government.
Local control is paramount. And that's what we respected. That's what I heard from my constituents in northern Michigan and Grand Traverse County. And that's what we made sure we did. We did not fund the Smarter Balance assessment tests. We left it up to the locals to decide what is best. Locals, meaning the school boards, the parents, the teachers, the educators. We left it up to them. It was very important. So we didn't fund any of that in this budget. There are things that are coming down the line, other parts of the country, as Frank referenced, but Michigan needs to make up its mind and decide what's best for our students. And that's what I've always supported and will continue to support for our students, is to make sure that you, the parents, the grandparents, the school board members, the educators, the superintendents, that you decide what is best for each community.
I find myself in a very odd position. I kind of agree with these guys. I actually ran for school board up in Sault Ste. Marie back in the 70s. It's an issue that is very dear to me. I taught college for many years, Michigan State University, Lake State, Bay Mills, Wayne State. And I have to be very honest. Over my career, I noticed the decline in the quality of the students. Even at Michigan State, which has a pretty high standard for admittance, I taught first year writing mostly. And the students that I got in my classroom were not prepared for college. Many of them were not prepared. So something that's going on at the local level, it's just not being done properly. I will agree though, I don't think that the federal government should be stepping into our local schools and dictating what we are doing here. The local people know best, and they should be in control.
Well, I agree with Greg, and I agree with Phil Bellfy. I think Phil put it very well also. I'm the only person in my family. I have a brother and sister that isn't a school teacher. They're retired, but my brother was a school teacher, his wife was a school teacher, my sister was a school teacher, her husband was a school teacher. But I don't believe in Common Core. I mean, 100% against it. And these things you get in the mailing about their innuendos about, they go on about Common Core. I think that's a very poor ad to put out. But I believe that the school boards, the school districts, and the people, and the students, and the parents, not just the parents, but also the students, should be involved in what the curriculum is, and what the student is learning, and how they're learning it, and their programs, and their process, and also their progress. So I'm 100% against Common Core. I think that everything should be local within the school districts, and the superintendents, and the students, and the parents. Thank you very much.
Yes, well, I appreciate this question. Common Core was certainly an issue that's important to me as an educator, and I do have a job, and I very much enjoy the opportunity to teach to kids and to equip them for the next stage of their life. I very much oppose Common Core and its implementation in Michigan. There are many legislators in Michigan who would like to have their cake and eat it too. There was a resolution that was voted for and passed back in September to continue to authorize Common Core in Michigan. Now, we've heard some people say here that we are continuing to delay the implementation of Common Core in Michigan. I'm for repealing Common Core in Michigan. We've seen other states do that. I believe it's a step in the right direction. I believe it's a thing we have to do. There are many who will claim that if we accept Common Core standards, we still keep control of our curriculum with strict stipulations. But what you have to understand is, with having nationalized standards, that will dictate your curriculum, and every teacher knows that. A teach-to-the-test mentality, one-size-fits-all approach to education does not work. It never has worked. We need not only our curriculum, but also our standards written right here in Michigan.
Yeah. All right. In the interest of time, we promised ending at 9 o'clock. We're going to forego our final couple of questions and move right into the last wrap. And Representative MacMaster, I believe you get to go first, so that'll be great. So the Senate candidates can go down the line, then we'll hear from our two candidates for the State House at the end. 2 minutes just to closing comments, and we'll have it go with you, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chamber, for being able to put this together, having you at the college, and thank you for everybody coming here tonight. Not to throw my counterparts here under the bus, there's a big difference between me and them, and that my voice, my vote, is what you represented me for to send me to Lansing. I vote what you want. There's a resolution to vote no for Medicaid expansion. I voted no. They voted yes. Voted no for Common Core. They voted yes. Everything that you wanted me to vote for, I went to Lansing and was your voice and voted that. And because of that, my campaign finance report is going to reflect that. You can't buy my vote. It's Northern Michigan against Lansing. There's a lot of money in Lansing. And when the campaign finance reports come out, you're going to see hundreds of thousands of dollars on my left and right here. And you're going to see less than probably $50,000 from me. There's something I have that they don't, and that's moral compass and character. And it's unwavering. It will never change. My vote cannot be bought, and it's going to be you that I will represent. I will be your strongest voice in Northern Michigan until I finish as your next state senator. And so help me God to protect the Constitution. We're going to turn this state around, and we're going to do it by the vote of the people. The government used to be controlled by the people. It hasn't been that way in the past. It's been big government with a lot of money. We are now poised to be able to turn this around and put the power of the government back in your hands. And I need your help to do that. So I hope to have you vote, have your vote here on August 5th.
It has been my pleasure to serve my hometown, my home community for the past 6 years. When I went to Lansing, I was elected to serve, and that's exactly what I did. I heard from my constituents. I voted the way that my people in Traverse City, in Kingsley, in Fife Lake, and the other villages asked me to vote. I was their true voice in Lansing. And I continue to have that support from real estate agents, from business owners, from teachers, from retirees, from young people. And they've shown that because when they say, for example, the real estate community, they said, Wayne, we like the changes you're making, that you're making it easier, less regulations for us in that business environment, that letting people, reforming DEQ, letting them build their homes where they would like to build them. Those type of things, they say, Wayne, we support you, and they tell their Lansing folks, we like Wayne, we want that support. So that's why I'm proud to have the endorsements of so many different groups, because I am representing you here in Northern Michigan, down in Lansing. So when I hear from the Small Business Association of Michigan, those are the people that I grew up with, those small business owners. When I have the endorsement of the Michigan Retailers Association, I've been a small retailer. I understand that environment. Those are those people from Northern Michigan saying, we support you, Wayne. The Michigan Chamber, by getting rid of all of the regulations, reforming unemployment insurance and workman's compensation. That is where the support. My support does not come from out-of-state billionaires. It comes from the people of Northern Michigan and throughout the state of Michigan, because they know that I'm doing the job for them, making Michigan, Northern Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula a better place to live, raise a family, retire, whatever you choose to do. That's what I've done for you these past 6 years, and would appreciate your vote this August 5th.
Well, obviously I can't tell you all the things that I've been doing in the legislature for the past 6 years or whatever, but I can tell you one thing. I've been involved in peace, justice, environment, anti-discrimination, equality issues for 40 years. So there's 6 years of experience, or 4 years of experience, or 2 years, or whatever it is, cannot stand up to what I have done. Dedicated my entire life fighting for people. We see now happening, and it's not only in the state of Michigan, but it's elsewhere, that somehow or another, that statement from Abraham Lincoln, who's a Republican, by the way, a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, they were talking about human beings. That's what I'm fighting for, human beings, not those corporate people that are backing all of the so-called conservative candidates. Conservatism is another code word for corporatism, and I'm opposed to corporatism. Human beings are people, and money is not speech.
Well, start off with the reason I'm running for senator is because I have a lot of respect for a gentleman by the name of Chase Osborne. He's from Sault Ste. Marie. He started the Sault Ste. Marie Evening newspaper. He discovered the mineral deposit, iron ore deposits north of Sault that the Oklahoma steel mill uses. He was governor for one term. He had a deficit when he went in. When he went out in 4 years, he had a surplus the same amount as a deficit. He was a square shooter. He was above board. And he's a person I've used for a mentor when I decided to run for senator for the state of Michigan in the 37th district. I will represent you in a very truthful, honest, sincere way. I have no behind me money. I have no special interest money. If you look at my platform as far as my website or my cards, I don't believe in lobbying or special interest money. I do question one person as a candidate here running under the Republican ticket. If he didn't accept any special interest money, how he's come, he's got about $300,000 in his war chest for campaign. Doesn't make sense, does it? But if you have any questions, just look up the Bureau of Elections in Lansing, and it'll show them. Whereas that other person, it's going to be my pleasure after August the 5th to run against Greg MacMaster. And if your vote doesn't mean anything, I'll just tell you one thing. Under a general election, popular election, Adolf Hitler got into office. And you know how he got in there? By one vote. So if one person would have voted against him, he would have never gotten into office. So think what kind of a difference that would have made on the world. So your vote is very important August the 5th. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it. If you'd like to look up my website, it's www.4senator.com. If you have any questions, call me up. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. And thanks again for your time, and I want to thank the Chamber for putting this on. One last word, I do strongly support Proposal 1, and so does the Petoskey Chamber, and so does the Traverse City Chamber. Thank you again.
All right, now we'll move into closing comments with our State House candidates. Lee?
Yes, thank you very much. Like you, I'm concerned not just for my own freedom and prosperity, but also for that of my children. If you have kids, you remember the moment where you first held your children in your arms and you understood that life now brought more responsibility. And now you were not just concerned about your own freedom, but how do you pass that on to your kids? How do you pass on that America to your kids that you had the opportunity of growing up in? Our founders came to the same conclusion. In the preamble, they said, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare," and they said this, "and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." They were concerned about how to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, future generations. So how do we do that? It was Ronald Reagan who warned us of this. He said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." We didn't pass it on to our children in our bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. And I believe, Mr. Reagan, I believe there come points in a community, in a state, in a country, where like-minded, limited government people have to band together and fight for the freedoms of their children. I'm very committed to doing that. I'm happy to be a candidate in this race, and I hope to earn your vote on Tuesday, August 5th. Thank you.
Thanks again for the News Review and the Chamber for putting this on. And it's easy when you're a public servant or politician, get very philosophical with jobs and to go negative. I won't go negative. I never have. I believe it's more important to tell your constituents what you're going to do for them and not what you're against. And so 4 years ago when I ran, I told you what I thought it would take to improve the state's economy. We no longer have structural budget deficits. We no longer have a credit rating that's going down versus up. We have right to work in Michigan, which is huge for the UAW state. That means we're putting the choices of the labor at home at the kitchen table and not in the union halls. We have a Pure Michigan campaign that's nearly doubled. That's creating jobs specifically for Northern Michigan and for our economy. I believe it's important to run on your record and to tell people what you're going to do when you get down there. It is nice to quote Ronald Reagan, and we all, sometimes I even run to it on my iPad, but this is a public service job at the state level. It's about customer service. It's about coming back up to these 4 counties in Northern Michigan, listening to people and going back down the next week and trying to implement those changes. I'll run on my record. There's over 1,000 votes that I've taken, and I can't sit down with one of you and we'll agree on all 1,000. But I hope that you measure me and my campaign on what I said I've done and what we'll continue to do for this area and for the state.